IDW Sonic Comic Issue 28. I don't know why Zor's able to say anything while Silver has him controlled by telekinesis. Again, no excuse for him not instantly knocking Zor out with it. He could even use telekinesis on his blood and put his blood down to his feet to knock him out. If you can control any kind of matter, you're a bloodbender too. I remember the Silver vs. Enerjack Knuckles arc. I'm not gonna forget about how powerful he was in that just because of the more modern, veiled excuses at writing Silver. That's how powerful he actually is. He could even control energy. Silver wastes tons of time talking to Zor, and finally Whisper hits Zor. It was interesting looking to see her hit him by bouncing lasers off tons of wisps until eventually it hit Zor in the chest. And I guess it was mandatory for her to do that if she wasn't in front of Zor, and so she couldn't get a straight shot at him. And Silver was too stupid to just bring Zor in front of her. But I don't see why she'd need to bounce a laser off more than 2 wisps. Maybe she needed all of them at once because it wouldn't be immediately obvious what the plan was against him like it would if there were just 2 wisps. But it shouldn't matter whether Zor knows the plan or not because he can't move. You'd think either way he'd be hit by the laser the instant it was fired because it's a laser. It moves at the speed of light. I wish this happened to Zor in the first panel. Why couldn't it have? At least this way, I guess it's better than my suggestion, because Silver would look like a dick for breaking Zor's limbs with his telekinesis. I say that, but he very intentionally left Zor to get roboticized, and even tells Silver that's inhumane of him and he's supposed to be a hero. All of the heroes are completely callous and calm about leaving the Zeti to get roboticized. And not one of them ever explains that they know it's gonna be fine because they'll get rid of the metal virus soon anyways. It's just completely swept under the rug. It's kinda weird. Again, I would have written it that Zor was unconscious at this point. He could command the few dozen around him to fight the other ones around him. If this happened with the Iron Queen, it'd be just as nonsensical. I was expecting the writing to be complete nonsense to try to justify Whisper getting roboticized when she has Silver to protect her. But fortunately, Silver wasn't made a complete wuss to have a dragged out fight and had him the whole time. Zaz says to look at Espio run. How can he have any room to run? He was completely surrounded by Robians last time. Well, we did never see what was in front of him, so I guess he wasn't surrounded. Based on how nervous he was, I thought he was... I'm glad Espio's not being basically killed, but it feels like a retcon here. It was just a cheap cliffhanger last time, and I don't like being misled by a fake story. It's gonna really feel like a cheap cliffhanger later. Espio throws his weapon at something and uses his rope and flings himself up to the rooftop. That's very impressive. It's so easy to forget he can do that because he never does that outside of IDW. Zaz sends a bunch of stars to damage the building. I guess the stars are made of force fields and holographically look like stars. I wish that was explained because it couldn't be actual stars or they'd all be dead from the heat. These stars look like they belong in Kirby, not Sonic. So they would feel more like they belonged if they were made more sci-fi with a force field explanation. In the dust, Espio jumps at Zaz when he's expecting him and smacks him a whole bunch of times. Why isn't Espio smacking Zaz instead of letting him talk? He uses his leaf tornado and disappears, and Zaz calls him a coward for it and tells him to come fight like a man. Why doesn't he immediately start spinning around trying to punch if he thinks he's disappeared? He could have easily prevented Espio from walking up to him and taking the emerald out of his chest. Didn't the last issue just establish that he had a superhuman sense of smell? So couldn't he smell Espio and know exactly where he is? Because he knew he was right in front of him. He'd know he continued to be in front of him. It gets replaced with a note he happened to have with him. I guess it was in his shoe the whole time. And I'm relieved that Espio survived to get the emerald, although I'm sure he'll get roboticized soon enough. Jet protectively tells Zeke to let Wave and Storm go. He does care. It's a miracle that Zeke is able to do all of that tedious talking instead of Jet smacking into him with his airboard first. I guess I was supposed to believe that Jet was really far away from him to start with. Oh good, it turns out Wave and Storm had weapons to fight the Robians with all along. I didn't know that last time. They didn't have them last time. Again, it feels like a retcon of last time. A positive retcon, for once, but still. I wish we saw Wave say that a frontal assault was a bad idea earlier, but instead she said she told you so now about something we never saw her say. So for all we know, she's lying. It feels like the writer forced her to have an I told you so moment just because she's a smart one in the game. Storm somehow despairs because he can't punch the Robians even though he has something to smack with just fine. Why is Jet still flying on his airboard and saying the names of his friends? Wouldn't he have had plenty of time to fly towards Wave and pick her up? I guess he didn't want to risk simply knocking her over by smacking into her high speed. He's not used to running into people and picking them up to save them like Sonic is. Zeke somehow wastes a ton of time talking arrogantly, so Jet's able to send him away with fans. Storm attacks Zeke too, and Wave uses a wrench to catch the emerald. Zeke lampshades that they got lucky. They did, because Zeke was being unskilled by talking instead of just saying that one command to defeat them already. It seems like the Zeti are being defeated by being handed the idiot balls instead of the heroes fully earning their victories. But at least they are winning. I'd rather the villains get the idiot balls than the heroes. Wave tells Jet self-sacrificially to take it and go because her extreme gear got lost to the Robians. Storm's almost smashed his to pieces, and Jet has the only working airboard, so he should go. Why isn't the so-called smart person immediately realizing that he can just save her on his airboard? We clearly saw in the reboot that an airboard is able to handle the weight of multiple people, and the reboot may not be canon to this, but it's still got the game's canon to it, so it works off the same logic. Obviously, Jet can just carry her while standing on his airboard and save her. Wave's not cut out to be an evil thief if she's immediately choosing to sacrifice herself for her friends. I didn't know she liked Jet at all. You'd think if she was so evil, she'd smack him with a wrench and steal his airboard. At first, when she told him to go, I thought she was going to reveal that she got infected out of nowhere too. You'd think that Wave would make the airboards able to handle the weight of 2 people, but I guess not. There's a panel where the background is black and Jet is contemplating. I'd be impressed by the writing if Jet decided to save Wave. It doesn't matter if he's often portrayed as a jerk. Even evil has loved ones. He clearly showed he was protective of his friends. We see an emerald fly at Storm and he asks what he's doing. Then the airboard flies into the portal without them. Jet says the rogues don't lose, and that means all of them, so he's gonna let Sonic do his hero thing with the emerald. And he wants to show the Robians a real challenge. How can he be that stupid? Wow. It wouldn't be so annoying if he specifically was written to say, it's not gonna matter if we get roboticized, because Sonic's gonna get rid of the metal virus anyways. At least the writer is portraying him as a good person here, so it's not coming off as spiteful. It seems to be trying to give him a respectful send-off. But if he's that ridiculously stupid, that's a failure. Flynn wrote the reboot. How can he not remember that he can just save someone with his airboard? I guess he does remember, and he just wanted to jump at the excuse to roboticize these people. He hates them that much, apparently. That's the only conclusion you come to when they're forced to have that happen to them. We see some of the heroes make it back to Sonic, and Silver says that with 2 more emeralds, he can save them all as Super Sonic. It's a shame he doesn't remember Sonic 06, and I guess that's the only explanation for why he doesn't think that, you know, I can go Super too. Duh. Sonic says he's been thinking about that, and tells him to listen. Is he gonna tell Silver to save the day instead? Sonic says that he needs to use Silver, the one thing that wasn't here before, because Silver came back in time and changed the past. Well, duh. So he admits that he needs Silver's help to pull this off. Silver should have known that. Rouge taunts Zavik in the air while holding the emerald, saying, "Goodness, does this one emerald power the whole ship?" I'm hearing this in her SA2 voice now. Suddenly I like her again. I had wanted to do this more elegantly, but I suppose brute force works for a brute like you. I guess based on her insisting on talking about stealing the emerald, she wants to get Zavik's attention, to get away from the heroes. That has to be it, because you'd think otherwise an experienced jewel thief would have gotten used to the idea of staying quiet while stealing. She'd just take it and silently flee. That's what I'd do. You'd think she'd be a better thief. And all the time she was talking, couldn't you have... I guess she's in the air, so it doesn't really matter if she's talking or not, so fine. Cuba and Orbot don't really need to talk and admit that they're on Rouge's side in front of someone who can control them anytime he wants, do they? They bounce ahead saying they're desperate, and Rouge seems to fly through a red light out of nowhere, and leaves the spaceship, and ends up crashing into the ocean. You'd think Zavok would have had plenty of time to have taken control of Cubot and Orbot and kept them in the spaceship with them out of spite. Good thing they magically had time to escape. It would have made more sense if the portal was summoned right where Rouge needed to be, so she and Orbot and Cubot wouldn't have had to travel a distance to get to them, and miraculously get to them in time. Come to think of it, it's a very good thing that it was explained that the Zeti controlled robots specifically by sending electromagnetic signals at a wireless receiver. Because otherwise, I'd be wondering why Zavok doesn't control the spaceship to telekinetically send it out of the ocean and have it fly anyways, because he can control metal and control stuff with electricity in it. But apparently it's not as broad as that. I wonder if the Iron Queen could do that. Or if he'd be like, no, she can't do that because the spaceship's too big. Sonic suddenly reveals that Zombots were on the spaceship. They were? I thought the only people on it were Zavok, Cubot, Orbot, Rouge, and that was it. There was a bunch of metal virus there, but that doesn't count as people. Unless the nanobots making it up are alive. I mean, they do reproduce. They don't have personal thoughts and desires. Rouge says she knows that Robians can survive the spaceship crashing on them. It crashed on them? I thought it crashed into the ocean. It also crashed into a little part of the land, but still. Rouge is asked about the one Zavok had, and Rouge says that once the fires are out, they'll dig it out of whatever is left down there. And while Rouge thinks Zavok isn't going anywhere, Eggman says he's actually heading right for them. How? Why did the writer make Rouge have a better grasp on logic than the story did? If you were on an airship and it crashed, you wouldn't be in any condition to go after the heroes after that. Because you think it crashing would cause you to be thrown upwards from the sudden stop of the spaceship landing. So you'd be thrown into the ceiling and die. I guess we're supposed to assume that happened to Zavok, but he had rings to protect him. At least we see that Zavok's powered up and huge with an emerald, so we can assume that the emeralds magically protected him from harm. This still feels like bullshit. Since when does an emerald have the power of rings to make you invincible? Once again, I have to assume the character survived the slapstick from having rings. But it's at the worst possible time. This should have been explained. He spits fire on the island, powered up with one emerald, in a comic that goes entirely off the game's logic for some reason. Sonic tries to make a plan, and fortunately his trailing off isn't because he became a robot. It should at least be explained that Zavok has so much chaos energy in him that one emerald is enough to make him go super. We could have assumed that was why it was the case for Scourge, because of the Master Emerald. Zavok throws Robians at the island to threaten the heroes, and the story ends there. Logically, you'd think Silver would just effortlessly grab and hold all of them still, so they wouldn't be a threat at all anyways. But maybe he's just needed to fight Zavok. He can't exactly leave his friends behind and fly at Zavok and telekinetically pull the emerald out of his chest, can he? Well, actually he can, because Sonic can run away and wait somewhere, and Silver can bring the emerald to Sonic. And then he can get rid of the metal virus. It doesn't matter if it's on his friends at that point. How the hell are they gonna make a whole issue out of this? Silver's so overpowered, in theory. What I just described would just take a couple of panels. I mean, even if Zavok has any attacks to send at him, you think Silver, with his ability to fly, would be able to dodge all of them. Fortunately, the last issue is gonna explain this well enough. This issue is about the heroes getting all of the emeralds back to Sonic, except for one of the emeralds, which Zavok powers up with in the end because with no explanation, he survived the crashing of the spaceship. Why couldn't we just be told that he had a bunch of rings? So he's able to throw Robians to Angel Island as he somehow gives himself a super form with one emerald. That was such bullshit. I think that happened with Dingo and Sonic Underground, but I'm able to accept it more there because it's already not like the games anyways, so it's going off its own creative logic. We can assume that because it's a different universe, the emerald in Sonic Underground is just way more powerful. Maybe Zavok's way more powerful, but God forbid they explain that, that'd be effort. But I can understand that the writer would think we'd need a climactic ending to the Metal Virus arc. It better lead to the ending anyways. It's clearly the 11th hour. It's bullshit that Jet stays and gets himself roboticized with his friends instead of just telling Wave just to stand on his airport with him. He was given a gigantic idiot ball, even if it is a memorable moment that ultimately proves that he really cares about his friends. I guess he isn't a giant jerk after all. Wish I had a lot more soft side moments from him than just that. Even if his logic is that he knows Sonic will get rid of the metal virus anyways, and so it doesn't matter if they get roboticized, you'd think he wouldn't want to put up with it happening to him for even a few seconds. Still, just like I predicted, nearly everyone who's been roboticized has had it happen because they were given the idiot ball, rather than the villains legitimately earning their victories. The only exceptions have been Vanilla and Tangle. Wave had an idiot ball by not immediately thinking to tell Jet to save her with the airport, which can handle the weight. Just look at the reboot. She's nothing but smart until this point, but no, he wanted them roboticized just as much as his Eddie apparently. It could have easily been written that she was infected at that point. I'm glad SBO didn't get roboticized. The writer had to retcon the situation of the rogues to even have them last that long. It turns out SBO wasn't surrounded and he could just fling himself to a rooftop to save himself. But him triumphantly winning didn't impress me enough to make me forgive the gigantic amount of idiocy involved in getting the rogues roboticized. Silver had no excuse for not disabling Zora instantly, but at least his scene wasn't written like a catastrophe like I'd expected. At least the heroes got the emeralds in less issues than I expected. I guess Zeke deserves to be made to be an idiot, but I'd rather have the writing make sense instead. I was interested enough in how they're trying to get all the emeralds that I actually reviewed all of those issues in a row on the same day,